RCMP considered getting bulldozers to deal with the blockade and spent at least $1 million over 2 weeks in their handling of Alberta Freedom Convoy demonstrations. They received a wave of backlash from the public for their sabotage of 3 excavators of protest supporters, and they alleged possible secret meetings between local MLAs and Coots demonstrators. This is just a starting point. Today, we reveal multiple recently obtained access to information documents from a variety of agencies, including the RCMP, to see their inside dealings with regards to the Coots blockade. After reaching out to RCMP and investigating the lawsuit they now face pertaining to 3 excavators they sabotaged at the Coots blockade, the Canadian press distributed this article. Political hitmen emails detail anger over RCMP's handling of border protests. In this article, an access to information document is reviewed, and they highlight that many complaints were about a YouTube video near the Coots highway protest, in which a person alleges RCMP caused damage to excavators. I witnessed this excavator damage firsthand and broke the news after confirming with RCMP that they were in fact responsible.
Sid, it's George Sabotage calling you back.
Yep, thank you.
So I can confirm that we disabled 3 excavators to prevent the equipment from being used in the illegal activity of the blockade.
To see that video in full or our full interview with the law firm representing the 3 excavator owners now suing the RCMP, go to truckerlawyer.ca. The reason why I bring this Canadian press article to your attention is because I needed to see for myself what the document actually said. And in finding this access to information package, I came across a dozen others, all pertaining to the Coots blockade as well. After obtaining and reviewing all of the ATI requests, I was shocked to see what was inside. And that's why today we're providing them in full and bringing you the highlights from each. The first ATI access to information document, which led me to the rest, was for the Civilian Review and Complaints Commission for the RCMP. In email communications dated February 15th, we see this. As discussed at management this morning, we have 6 third-party complaints about alleged RCMP behavior in disabling excavators near the protests in Coots, Alberta. The video that was given in many of the complaints is the following from Rebel News. The last complainant indicated that 3 privately owned excavators were parked on private land with the farmer's full permission 1 kilometer away from Highway 4, just north of Coots. We are preparing third-party letters for the complainants, but wanted to bring it to your attention in case it was something we wanted to look more closely at. Thanks. If we get any first-party complaints on this one, please send them to the RCMP for investigation. Being able to look at this one on review is sufficient. Thanks again. In this email dated February 28th, 2022, they provide a summary of complaints. 16 13-party complaints arose from the Coots protests, and of 126 complaints related to the RCMP, 3 were submitted for investigation. To see all the complaints submitted, you can check out that full document in the link in the description below of this video. The second ATI request shows a total of $1.2 million expensed by RCMP in relation to the Coots blockade, and notes that all applicable costs have not been processed for payment as of March 15th, the date of receiving the ATI request, putting $1.2 million as a starting point for RCMP costs in handling Alberta Freedom Convoy demonstrations between January 29th and February 16th. The third request to the Canadian Food Inspection Agency sought all records relating to animals in transport trucks affected by the Coots border blockade from January 29th to February 7th, 2022. This came after Coots Mayor Jim Willett told reporters that cattle were stuck at the blockade.
They are, because I've got one resident who has 40 truckloads of cattle. He's been waiting for 4 days now to get across the border.
Members of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency quickly investigated. And as we see here, one says, I disagree with the comments from the mayor of Coots and would say this is not accurate. Unfortunately, by then, the damage was done, and these allegations had already been presented as facts to the public. This fourth ATI request of RCMP details all briefing materials, including emails, email attachments, briefing notes, and issues management reports related to the Coots protests. There are 2 main reports within this ATI I'll detail in full, but first, here are some interesting points found in the rest of the package. In RCMP briefing notes from February 2nd, 2022, meant for the former Premier Jason Kenney, it was made explicitly clear that no officers were injured during a highway incident. They even underlined it for him. But during the blockade, former Premier Jason Kenney lied, saying demonstrators assaulted RCMP officers.
I've also received reports in the last hour of people allied with the protesters, assaulting RCMP officers, including in one instance trying to ram members of the RCMP.
We confirmed with the RCMP that this was untrue and no officer had been assaulted.
And that was an assault on an RCMP officer?
No, that was an assault between the two civilians, between a protester and a civilian.
On top of that, a separate ATI request was filed because of Jason's lie. This ATI request shows no records exist of Alberta car camera footage or official reports to support the request summary's allegation of people ramming or assaulting RCMP. This further affirms that the former Premier Jason Kenney not only lied, but so too did he lead members of the media and the public to believe that peaceful demonstrators were violent extremists. Now back to the fourth ATI request. Nick Friesen along with an unnamed individual are mentioned by RCMP as being the organizers of this event, which evolved into the Coutts blockade. What's odd about this is that in September last year, RCMP alleged 3 men to be key participants of the blockade. Those 3 men were charged with mischief, and in the same report, RCMP had dropped 2 other charges. RCMP also alleged good faith actions of demonstrators opening lanes on February 2nd was in relation to unsubstantiated meetings between demonstrators and members of the Legislative Assembly here in Alberta. It is important to note that the 18-day blockade never had a leader. Thousands of Canadians demonstrated in Coutts and Milk River at the same time as the Freedom Convoy movement in Ottawa was underway. This grassroots movement saw millions of people demonstrate around the world against vaccine mandates and COVID restrictions of their own volition. To find out more about those 3 men alleged by RCMP to have been key participants of the blockade, go to truckerdefensefund.ca and see the crowdfunding initiative we at Rebel News set up providing them free legal defense. But now, listen to this. You might have heard that during demonstrations, officers attempted to obtain tow trucks and Canadian Armed Forces assistance to remove demonstrations. Revealed in this Access to Information document is that RCMP even sought to incorporate demolition equipment into their vehicle removal process at the blockade. As mentioned in this and another ATI request sent to Public Safety Canada, inside we find email communications dated February 13th, which show that the biggest operational challenge to date is procuring towing/wrecking equipment and skilled workers to operate the equipment. Turns out they were looking for demolition equipment, notably in the form of a bulldozer. Investigators are still working on some additional heavy-duty bulldozer strategies that would support the existing tow assets. Perhaps ironically, these communication notes were sent the same day RCMP vandalized and disabled 3 excavators of Coutts blockade supporters nearby demonstrations on private property. With all that said, this is the last thing I want to bring to your attention from this particular package. 2 situational reports by RCMP detailing events of each day and current statuses. The first one, dated 9:30 a.m. on February 14th, shows this. In the early hours of February 14th, search warrants were executed on 3 separate trailers, located on a residential property located at a short distance from the Smuggler's Saloon. A total of 11 individuals were arrested, and a significant cache of weapons was seized. Early in the afternoon, an identified male associate of individuals in custody was stopped by tactical assets on his way to the Coutts blockade location. Investigators believe the male had an immediate intention to shoot members on site. Search of his vehicle post-arrest produced a combat-style shotgun and a long rifle. The second situation report from RCMP, dated 1 p.m. February 15th, details the 13 arrested individuals on February 14th and tells us a little more about the weapons that were found during the execution of warrants on the property in Coutts. As a result of the serious public safety threat, an investigation was conducted and RCMP seized the following firearms. 1 prohibited firearm with readily accessible ammunition. 1 loaded restricted firearm. 1 restricted firearm with readily accessible ammunition. 2 loaded non-restricted firearms. 10 unloaded non-restricted firearms. And note, it doesn't say that there was ammunition readily available. At least 2 overcapacity magazines. There may be more, but they have not been examined yet. There is only 1 225-gram can of pepper spray UDAP bear deterrent. Additionally, there are prohibited overcapacity magazines, some loaded, large quantity of ammunition, and body armor. In addition to the individuals listed, investigators are actively investigating 3 other individuals who are connected to this group. This will in all probability result in additional persons being charged. With respect to the blockade itself, Investigators have at present identified a group of 20 individuals who played a key role in supporting and coordinating blockade activities. Investigators continue to work with Alberta Prosecution Services to review and evaluate all evidence, but it is expected that these individuals will be charged with a variety of criminal code offenses, including mischief over $5,000 and potentially conspiracy to commit. These individuals will also be charged under Alberta's Critical Infrastructure Defence Act. In addition to these persons, investigators do expect to lay charges under the Critical Infrastructure Defence Act against other persons who participated in the blockade. To date, there have been approximately 320 tickets issued under the Traffic Safety Act. Okay, so there's clearly a mountain of information in these documents, and if you want to see them for yourself, go through the article in this report and you can review every single line word for word. The only obtained document we have yet to discuss is larger than all the others combined, so I'll leave my investigation on that package for another report. There's also the matter of ATI A 2021-798. This request, unlike the others, was submitted not to RCMP or anyone else. It was submitted to CSIS, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. Even though I submitted all my requests at the same time and received all of them back in short order, CSIS is still holding out. Once we've obtained this final ATI package, we'll make sure to provide it in full as well. The last thing I'll leave you with today is that as I was concluding this report, a final ATI request was added to the original list. Now, you may have heard about the drama CBC is trying to gin up around Danielle Smith and the Coutts blockade, but this new ATI shows clearly no records exist of correspondence between the Alberta government and federal Crown prosecutors about federal prosecutions of Coutts blockade supporters. That's all for this report. If you want to donate to the legal defense for many of the Coutts blockade supporters who were ticketed or charged, who had their private property sabotaged, see what we're doing to help at truckerlawyer.ca or truckerdefensefund.ca. And I would also like to mention that recently, multiple individuals who were ticketed during the Coutts blockade had their charges dropped thanks to the good work of the people at the Democracy Fund. You can find out more about their story at thedemocracyfund.ca, the civil liberties group aimed at protecting charter rights of everyday Canadians. I want to thank you all for tuning in. For Rebel News, I'm Sidney Fizzard. Don't forget to go to truckerlawyer.ca to find out the latest on the Coutts blockade. We'll keep you updated there. And if you want to see some of our initiatives where we're trying to crowdfund the legal defense for many of the individuals who were ticketed and charged, go to truckerlawyer.ca.